Well, y'all voted for it. I'm a writer. An overwriter in recovery mode at that. I need those 1,000 words. Oh boy. This is going to be so intriguing. Enjoy the laughter. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Jenna O'Malley. I am your soul writer, author of sci-fi, fantasy, with dashes of romance and nerdy references. Y'all voted for it. Welcome to Draw My Life. I do tell you all occasion about my life. I don't let you know the nitty-gritty, so this will be probably the most cozy and close we've gotten to one another. So, first things first. Let's start from the beginning, shall we? Clean slate and all. Gonna try to keep that to Act 1, 2, and 3, maybe. So, speaking of, Act 1. I'm currently about late 30s. We'll divide this 10 and lower, 20 and lower, 30 and lower now. So, age 0 to 10. More like class with me, isn't it? Anyway, so I was born in a little state called Maryland. Where we love crabs. That's a crab. I can't draw. That's a crab. So here in Maryland, specifically in a little city shaped at the top of the bay called Baltimore. If you say it Baltimore, you're not native. Baltimore. Just anyway saying. The year 1987. According to my mother, it was one of the hottest summers ever. Hello, angry Mario-like sun. Sun. Crab. And I don't remember too much about being wee little. However, I do remember something very specific. I had 4 older brothers. George, Joe, Dennis, Stuart, and me. I was a change of life baby. Mom and Dad were quite old. You see, Mom was blessed with 3 boys from her previous marriage, and her first husband would have loved to have been here. He was unalived when Dennis was about 2 years old. My eldest brother George would have been about 6 because they're stair-stepped, okay? So you've got 2 years and then 2 years in between them. 6, 4, 2, basically. My dad comes in several years later when Dennis was older. And there's 11 years in age between Dennis and Stuart. There's another 8 years until you get me. My dad was also married before my mom to a lady when he was serving overseas in the military in Panama, and when he came stateside, she said, "I'm divorcing you, I'm staying." And so are the kids. So I have 2 half siblings I have never met. I know it's a boy, I know it's a girl. My dad was in an accident, and he was told, because of being thrown through the windshield of a vehicle, that he was lucky certain areas would function to let him procreate after my half siblings I've never met. Well, Stuart came along a couple years into my parents' marriage, and my mom had 2 angel babies in between. And then she had me. Now, mind you, my mom had lost her best friend the year before I was born to a C word that needs to explicative off. There you go. And my mom was very much grieving her best friend. It was actually her mother-in-law from her first marriage, so George, Joe, and Dennis's dad's mom. They lived right around the corner from each other. And so much so to the point that Stuart was considered one of her grandbabies. We don't do step and half in this family. Notice the only reason why I called these 2 my half siblings is because I don't know their names even. Dad wouldn't even tell us their names. I do not consider George, Joe, and Dennis my half brothers. They are my brothers. Period. End of story. Because we were raised together. So, Dad was working dad. Mind you, when I was born, George was 22 years older than me. Just about. Just about. Give or take, depending on where birthdays land. And I was kind of blessed in that I grew up having my dad, my brother Joe, and my brother Dennis as 4 pretty awesome men in the house. George and Joe are truck drivers. Dennis did myriad things, but today is a vet tech. So, spent most of my life in Baltimore. Until 1998. A couple of key things happened in 98. August, unfortunately, was my first encounter with personal grief and loss. Right before my 8th birthday, my favoriteest person in the world at the time, my dad's mom, the only grandparent who was alive that I knew, passed away. Heart issues. We moved the following October. Why did I say 98? That's wrong. 95. I was 8. Goodness, that's a Freudian slip. That's my dysgraphia or dyscalculia getting me. We moved in 95 when I was 8. There you go. In October, and those of you who know my angel baby's birthday is circa Halloween will think it's hilarious. That's when we moved to Cumberland, Maryland. The house where I first started my first studio is actually out of my childhood bedroom, and life was horrible around that time. This is when life got rough, was 95. Things were okay. We moved for a myriad of reasons. One of them being a certain somebody over here, love you brother dear, rest well, kept getting in trouble with gang activity in the Beemore hood that we lived in. So literally, we lived in the hood. We lived the 1300 block of West Lombard Street. We lived in the hood. And Cumberland was a 180. We went from hearing gang activity in our sleep at night and ship horns from the very nearby Marina Bay Inner Harbor area to hearing trains, birds. And morning doves are so mean on a Saturday morning when y'all trying to sleep, just saying. So I did not transition well. Moving from age 8 to 10 for Act 1, I didn't transition well at all. I was severely bullied in the elementary school I moved to. Why? Well, when parents found out where I was from and where I lived, a couple of parents took note to make sure that a lot of kids were aware that I was from gangland and that if they hung out with me, guess what they risked? Yeah. Let's go to Act 2, shall we? Well, Act 2.1. Let's go to Act 2.1. Yeah, parents, don't do that. Don't set another kid up to be bullied. Don't let where they're moving from define them, especially when you don't know anything about them. The high school principal at the high school I graduated from would not let my brother Stuart enroll unless he played football because you're from a bad neighborhood and we don't want you here unless you're playing football. Yeah, I attended that high school. Wait until you find out how it went here. So, Act like Double Dragon 2, but only 0.1. Anyway, so from the age of 11 to 20, this would have been middle school and high school. Spent most of the time at the same house in Cumberland. Now, mind you, my dad by this time was living on disability. I love my daddy very much, but Dad couldn't work anymore. And this meant that money was my mom was working 2-3 jobs just to make ends meet. And if you know anything about claiming disability in the US with a child to raise, you know it's pretty impossible to do it and still put food on the table. There's this rule that my mother could not make more than about $20,000 a year, or they would cut into my dad's checks. And that was with 2 kids under the age of 18 until both Stuart and I aged out. So, yeah, there were times where I listened to Mom and Dad argue a lot. A lot. To the point that we wondered as their children if they were going to stay together. Heads up. The only thing separating my parents now is that whole till death do we part thing. We'll talk about the parting here in a bit. Middle school, the only really problem in middle school is my right knee got bummed up pretty bad in 7th grade. There's a system of ligaments in and around the knee. And part of your kneecap's growth is, as a child, is very similar to a baby's soft cap. Like how your skull grows and fuses as you get older. The same happens with your joints. They're very liquidy when you're younger, so you can pass through hips and wiggle in and out of things for a reason, and they get more rigid. Well, right around the time when puberty, 7th grade, was making my bones really decide to get rigid, I took a nasty tumble. And they're called growing plates or growth plates in your knee colloquially. I basically did this to the ones in my knee that had already grown and fused together. They were debating, is it ethical to do a knee replacement, given that knee replacements at the time in the early aughts because that would have been 2000. No, that would have been 98, 99. That would have been 98, 99. Because I was a freshman during 9/11. Anyway, we're going to talk about that in a minute. During the 98, 99 year, replacement knees were mostly built for 50-year-old men's bodies. They didn't even really have knees that were good for women's bodies. So they're like, is it even ethical for us to do a knee replacement on a 12 or a 13-year-old? And will her knee even heal back together? Heads up, I'm due for a knee replacement probably in the next decade or so of my life, especially if I don't get my weight under control very soon. Because it healed, overlapped on a fissure. Like, so say there's one part of it, and there's the other part of it, and basically this one wants to push that way on that part, and this one wants to push that way. And if you know anything about tectonic plates and fissures and earthquakes, welcome to arthritis. So yeah, I limp for a reason. Because of this, my right leg is actually shorter a little bit. Not much, not noticeably much. Enough for me to limp, but I don't need like a huge wedge in my shoe or anything. I should have an insert that's a little thicker than the one on my left foot to compensate, but I don't have to wear them. Good sturdy pair of shoes, I'm normally okay. So then I went to, if you're in Maryland, you know this high school's name. It's one of the few things modern day that we are known for. Over the top we go. Oh, Fort Hill High. We win so many state 1A whatnots for football that our football team plays yearly at Ravens Stadium to celebrate nowadays. And that streak kind of started way back when I was in high school. Now, mind you, I forewarned you we were getting here. Trigger warnings apply. I started high school 2001, August. We all know what happened. A few weeks later? That week was literally our midpoint for the first 9 weeks. I remember it because we were studying for a huge test in one of my advanced placement courses I was in as a student. And I'll never forget where I was. On 9/11, I was sitting in what we called voice choir. Mr. Thompson required you take 1 year of voice choir for him to teach you the ropes of how being in a choir with him before he would put you in his big secular choral choir. And then from there, you would get picked from other projects. I was one of his favorite stage managers for theater stuff of all time because I started out in voice choir with him my 9th grade year. And he came running into that class. Rest well, Mr. Thompson. He came running into that class. And he was the first teacher to ever tell us to sit the down and shut the up. Watch the TV. I thought my brother George was delivering to the New York area that day because he was a long haul trucker. Thank God he got routed away from the city for the day, and so did my brother George, because if you don't know, you can drive from Baltimore to New York in the time it would take for Joe, still living in Baltimore at the time, to do a day trip up and back even. They put our school on lockdown. If you know anything about the geography of the Cumberland, Maryland area, or that tiny little potato chip crumb that sits dab smack in between Pennsylvania and West Virginia. That would be Cumberland. Guess what's 45 minutes away? Our high school had to go in lockdown because our hospital helicopter landing pad was our, in part, if they needed to for overflow, was our stadium, our football stadium, because of how big Greenway Avenue Stadium even is today. They can use it as a secondary landing spot if they have to for the local medevac. And the state troopers have used it a couple times for like missing people running away from the local prison and whatnot. So yeah, we went on lockdown and we were not sure why until the news told us what was going on. We freaked out. Mind you, I'm trying to sneak down to a payphone because we're on lockdown to call my parents. And my parents are out grocery shopping in an age before cell phones. Hearing this on the news, they come home and they don't have a way to get a hold of either of their sons. And I've now seen it on the news while at school. Every class has made us watch it live. And freaking out of, where's my brothers, where are you guys? Because what am I thinking when they're not picking up? Oh yeah. 9/11 formed many a student's freshman year and senior year experience. And I don't think it ever left the graduating class of 2005 because we were freshmen in 2001. At the age of 17, because of when my birthday is, I graduated from high school as the first of my siblings to do so. My brothers had all dropped out because Baltimore, crime rate, they would rather go work than be in school. And they didn't get their GEDs until later. Stuart got his GED right before I graduated high school. And then Joe, George, and Dennis went and got theirs as adults through night school. Because their job wouldn't hire them eventually without it, basically, even though they had the experience that they had. Fall of 2005, I attended the local college, Allegheny College of Maryland. And for the first couple of weeks of school, I was still a minor. Because, again, where birthdays are, my birthday is early September. And I let a boyfriend I had at the time, who was not yet quite my former fiancé, talk me out of doing what I really wanted to do. I threw away a full ride scholarship to Hood College for a teaching degree and went to ACM for a degree in business office management, medical office management, and paralegalship that I basically never used because I graduated in December 2007 with basically 3 degrees in 5 semesters. Not bad if you ask me. But what literally happened on January 1st? How did my 20s kick off? You all know what happened in the U.S. in 2008. That was literally the beginning to act rightfully so at this point. 2.2. So, I guess I could still call this part of Act 2, but Act 2.2. We're getting closer to the time that you all know who I is a little bit more accurately. Because some of you are going, you have more college degrees than... Yes, I have more college degrees than anybody my age probably should. Let's put it that way. So that's not dry. 2.2. Well, Expo markers. I love it when the board dries quickly. Thank you much. Teacher problems. Anyway. Teacher problems. That's a little better. That's a little better, if I do say so myself. So, Act 2.2. This is going to be 21 to 30. So, 2008 and the housing crisis here in the U.S. is kind of where my 20s started, accompanied with I told my then former boyfriend, now former fiance, no, after accepting the ring. He proposed, and then I found out that he had a baby with a girl and didn't tell me about it while he was in college. So, yeah, that was my 2007, 2008. And then I couldn't get a job. No matter what I did, I could not for the life of me get a job outside of working in call centers. Now, there's nothing wrong with working in call centers. It's good money. I managed to get up to lower level management, but yeah, they dropped me hard over something stupid and silly. And I was suddenly very broke and struggling more than I ever could. And I was only 6 months out of college. And my dad said, maybe this is a hint, because the person that you gave up being a teacher for is no longer now in your life. Why don't you go back, with the financial crisis being what it is, why don't you go back to school? So, that's what I did. For 4 years. I attended Frostburg State University. Go Bobcats! Go Bobcats! And it's literally one of the oldest teacher colleges in Maryland. Unfortunately, it cost me a lot of money, and had I gone to Hood, I would have gotten the same degrees and, maybe $10K instead of $100K. And from August of 2008 to May of 2001, I studied transatlantic literature and linguistics with a minor in theatrical stage production as my degree. You don't get much more liberal arts than that. And the reason why the theater was to help me overcome my anxiety to perform in front of a classroom as a teacher. So we're picking up circle around you kind of know me, because in here is where I met a certain somebody. In here is where I met a certain somebody. And in July of 2012, married a certain somebody. We were college sweethearts. He was attending the Altoona branch of Penn State University. Go Nittany Lions. Just another Bobcat. Really, it's just another Bobcat. I know I'm going to get yelled at for that. Anyway. And we very much fell in love. And that following year, he finished college. And then my teaching career kicked off, outside of substitute teaching, we shall say. in 2013 in a little school called Hampshire High School in Romney, West Virginia. Go Trojans! I taught there for 4 years before taking a year off to fix my mental health, big time, because teacher burnout is a thing. Teachers, are you taking care of yourself right about now? You better. It's your break too. It's not just a break for the kids, you know. Really, truly, it's not just for them. It's for you too. So, I taught there for 4 years, and then I taught at Hedgesville Middle School in Hedgesville, West Virginia, from 2018 to, you guessed it, March 2020. You kind of see where I feel like I went through a cycle. If you know anything about what's going on with Plutonian cycles right now, you all are cackling at me. Because, yeah, I can't really call it Act 3 yet. I guess I gotta edit this and say this is still Act 2 that I'm in right now, because I don't want to be in Act 3 yet, y'all. I got too much left to give for me to be in Act 3 yet. We're only really just beginning in some ways, right? So, yeah, in the last 4 years, I've become way more. Teenage me screams with glee and calls me a fool for not starting sooner. Instead of going for my master's, I had an offer to edit professionally for a firm and move to New England to make it happen. I chose master's degree in teaching instead. I guess that theater degree paid off after all, huh? Act 3 is nowhere near here yet, y'all. Over the top we go. Fly our colors. It's go time. Let's do this.